go right ahead.
Don't need to wait for the light. Oh, there we go. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'd like to call the Scarborough Town Council meeting, special council workshop on Piper Shore's contract zone amendment, Wednesday, May 15th. Call it to order. I think with that, we're here to just get updated. We've had these conversations. We had them earlier in the winter, and we're back at the table. I think there's some updates to the contract zone that you'd like to share with us, and I think you have a presentation ready for us for the first 20 minutes or so.
Yes.
So I think the structure will be, I think there'll be about a 20-minute presentation updating us about, anything that's new, where we are, just kind of getting us back to the current state. There'll be a conversation of counselors that may have questions and conversations among us, and if there's time at the end, there will be time for public comment. If we don't get to all the public comments when we start our town council meeting, one of the first items on the agenda is public comment. So if you didn't get time to have a comment, people are welcome to come to the podium at that point in time. So with that, I think do you know all of us?
I think so, yeah.
You've been here a few times and you've seen
I think you're on our
faces.
Christmas card list at this point in time.
Well, thank you. Thanks for coming, and we're ready to listen to whatever you'd like to share with us.
Great, thank you. Good evening, all. I'm Jim Adamovich. I'm CEO of Piper Shore's Maine Life Care Retirement Community Incorporated. With me today is Will Conway. Will is with Sebago Technics. Sebago has provided the civil engineering consultation and support throughout the process to date. And also Charlie Katz-Levy, who is legal counsel representing Piper Shore's from the Jensen Baird firm. Today, we'd like to take the opportunity to update council on a significant amount of activity and effort that has been put forward in the plan since the last workshop that we had. I believe that was in February, if I'm not mistaken. Since that time, we have had a successful opportunity to meet with the planning board on the 29th of April, and the planning board was recommending a preliminary approval, I believe, to the town council. So at this point in time, the first reading of the contract zone was successfully completed in June of 2018. The planning board review and recommendation to town council occurred on April 29th, and we're awaiting hopefully the second reading and the outcome of the town council's deliberation of the contract zone amendment. The presentation that we have for you today will step council through some updates, some significant updates to the plan itself. We'd also like to emphasize the community and public benefits that we believe that the plan will share with the town of Scarborough, and also talk about some of the elements of the contract zone amendment draft for your consideration. So to step through the process, we'll ask Will to begin the presentation to council. Will?
Thank you. This presentation is very similar to what we presented to the planning board prior to their action on the preliminary.
Will, could I ask that you stand at the podium just to make sure we get your voice?
The mic.
Thank you. So this is the property. I don't think this is going to work. But anyway, you're all familiar with the location. This is the overall site plan.
Stand right there. Does that work?
Oh, I think I can, yeah, I can project on here.
Yep.
So one major change to the plan is we're now proposing to cap the density at 52 units and place 12.46 acres of the rear of the property in permanent conservation easement. This is the entrance to the site. One thing of note is the pedestrian connectivity going across Piper. The planning board is requesting us to move it closer to this location, which we'll do when we go back to them for final plan. This is the pocket neighborhood. Again, one of the benefits that Charlie will describe to you is the innovative housing style with the circulation around the perimeter, the pockets with all of the porches facing them, and then all opening out onto the open meadow with a stormwater pond that'll have a permanent water elevation. So it's a very unique design that we're proposing. This is a cross-section of the berm along Newcomb Road. This is Newcomb Ridge Road, excuse me, it's right here. This is the pocket neighborhood. We're proposing a 10 to 12 foot earth berm with heavy evergreen plantings as a buffer along that edge because there's no existing trees in that area. This is the meadow. One of the things the planning board asked us to do, and it's now part of our plan, is to extend the buffer from Newcomb all along this edge of the property. So we've shown that in our plans, which was part of the preliminary approval. This is the hybrid housing unit again, very innovative housing style, 28 units with a central downstairs dining area, pub, etc., and exercise rooms to benefit all of the residents in the community. And again, that evergreen buffer, so the round symbols, those are existing trees to remain. We're augmenting those with a dense evergreen buffer, again, 10 to 12 foot trees. This is the previous design of the hybrid building, which we were proposing a height of 55 feet. We've now reduced that to 40 feet, a considerable reduction in height. This is a view across the meadow to the hybrid building. And then finally, this is the estates neighborhood. 8 single-family estates, again, organized with, oriented onto the open space pockets. Then this is the public trailhead. And then the black area is the beginning of the conserved area, which extends to the far western portion of the property. And again, when we say innovative housing, there's nothing like this in Scarborough. There's nothing like this in Maine. So it really is a benefit to the town. And I'm going to introduce Charlie Cashlevy to talk about the CCA language.
Thank you, Will.
You're welcome.
So the first slide that I'm going to talk through highlights some of the changes that have been made since the last time I think you were before the council. Again, we've capped density at 52, hearing the concerns of the planning board, the council, and the butters. We've also decreased the height of the building. Setbacks have been increased, additional buffer areas have been added, and almost 12.5 acres of land is now being placed into permanent conservation easement. So those are all new features that have been added in response to comments that we've received in addition to others. Piper Shores is trying to make a substantial investment in Scarborough. And frankly, the team did not anticipate that it would take this long or face this number of hurdles. There is a need for senior housing, and that can be demonstrated by the wait list, the multi-year wait list at Piper Shores. And Piper Shores needs to grow. It will grow. It hopes to be able to do that in Scarborough. As Will said, there's innovative design in this project. There is conservation and open space and public access in this project. There is public parking in this project. All of the sidewalk areas will be open to the public. Signage will be added, encouraging public access and public parking. We've enhanced the setbacks well beyond what the ordinance requires. Additional buffering and screening has been added. I'd like to point out some numbers because I think numbers are helpful. $250,000 being offered into the Affordable Housing Fund. Employment. Piper Shores currently employs 250 people. This project will add at least another 30 jobs, bringing close to 300 the number of people that Piper Shores will employ in the town of Scarborough. Taxes. Piper Shores is the largest taxpayer in the town. They currently pay over $1.5 million in taxes. With this project, they would be paying $2 million in taxes. I think there's a budget meeting coming up. I think those numbers are important. I just want to, as we think about all of those various benefits, there have been a lot of comments that are focused on the micro level. And the micro level is important, the neighbors are important, but I think you also have to look at the macro level. What does this project bring to the town of Scarborough? This is showing the conservation easement area. When you combine that with the 95 acres in conservation on the other side of the road, that brings the total to about 108 acres of permanent conservation easement and public access. I won't belabor this, but this is a little bit of the process that we've been through. Water engagement. We have all of the approvals we need, but one. Thank you.
That concludes the material we had presented for the benefit of council, and we'd be happy to entertain any questions that you may have of us.
Great. Councilor Hammond?
Quick question. You mentioned that you've received all the permitting except one. Can you tell us a little bit about the one that's missing and timing for that?
Yes, it is the contract zone amendment from the town of Scarborough.
There you go. There you go. It was a trick question.
You walked right into that one, Counselor Hamel.
I'm trying to work away from being Dr. No.
I'd like to clarify that. There is one permit that is in draft form, which is our DEP permit, but that final permit is imminent.
So on that one though, timing for that one? Timing for that one, do you know? I mean.
Oh, within a week or 2 weeks.
Okay.
We have a draft permit, and in my 30 years of doing business in Maine, I've never seen a draft permit modified. So the way it works is the project manager in Portland prepares it, sends it to us, and also sends it to Augusta for signature. So that is in process, so it's imminent.
So the expectation would be, if I have this straight, you expect to have that in place before any final approval?
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you.
Councilor Fuller?
2 questions. One, and I think you already answered it, but I just want to clarify. Because I know there was a question about there was a gap area between the parking lot and the original conservation easement.
Yes.
It's now contiguous.
We've moved it 3.5 acres forward.
So it goes right up to the parking lot.
It used to be at 9 acres, it's now at 12.46.
Okay.
So what we essentially did was to encompass the adjacent wetlands, which are not.
I think that's the gap I was referring
Yes.
or thinking about.
We originally had straight lined it north-south on the parcel, have modified it, the design of course, but added about another 3.5 acres to the total.
Okay. And the number of parking spots there?
There's 7 spots at the trailhead.
Thank you.
I guess I have a couple of just follow-up questions. We've kind of gone through a process that you outlined, and I think the last time you'd had a workshop with the council, we'd identified several items that we just, asked you to think about and come back. I just wanted some clarity. One item that was actually identified in the planning board was the conversation around water quality.
Yes.
And I noticed in your response to us, you talk a lot about a commitment to monitoring water quality for a period of time to make sure there's no issues. What it was silent on, though, and I was just looking for clarity, I think when the question was brought forth by some of the neighbors, they were concerned about if you had any impact on water quality, what would be the remedy? So you talk a lot about monitoring, but what is the commitment around if in fact, and I know that, science would have to prove it, but what if in fact they suffer a degradation in water quality? Is there some remedy for them, or what is your purpose for that?
And
Or
the
what is your thought?
time frame, too, because we talked about getting expert witness for.
Well, there has been some language added to the new contract zone, which you're familiar with, and I think you're referencing Section 8, which requires Piper Shores to monitor water quality.
Yep.
And then both prior to construction, during construction, as well as 24 months following construction.
Right.
And the commitment I know Piper Shores would make is that any water quality degradation tied to the site improvements, they would remedy.
So can that just get codified somehow? I mean, probably when that happens, a lot of us won't be here, so 8 doesn't talk to that. I didn't see it anyplace else in the contract, so if that is the intent, it would be great to get that sort of incorporated into these documents we're looking at. It was just silent, and it may have been just an oversight, but I know that was important. Actually, that came up in one of the comments of the planning board members, so
Yes.
that was one. 2, I just want to make sure, we had talked about, and I just want to make sure it's a definitive answer. We had talked about our preference, or some of the council members' preference was to have inclusive affordable housing on site.
Yes.
Because of that, I think it was your preference, you didn't want to do that. Instead, you've increased your affordable housing a lot.
Yes.
But I just wanted to confirm
Yes,
that that is something,
that's-
you were going to consider it and come back and report. So I think this is your preferred direction.
Our response is to more than double the affordable housing fee. So the original affordable housing fee was based upon 61 units that were requested, times $2,000 per unit. We, of course, have reduced the unit count that we're requesting. It is essentially $5,000 per unit of in lieu fee for affordable housing. As I think we've said at a previous workshop, the fact is that there are a number of ways to build affordable housing. We would like to recommend that the affordable housing that be built by professionals who really understand that facet of business. It's a unique business in and of itself. We build market rate housing. That is our commitment in terms of design and operation. I would rather leave the affordable housing to be developed and constructed by people who that is their focus, that is their work. Likewise, it's very difficult to put up a few units of affordable housing in a more remote location, and the reality is that this is rather remote from town. It's only 3 miles away, but for someone who might have issues with transportation, it's a world away. Generally, affordable housing, in our experience, can be done best in more of a clustered approach, close to amenities and services within the town itself. So for those reasons, we determined that the best way to approach the request was through increasing the affordable housing fee.
Then the last question I had is really there, on the planning board, there were, and I don't know if the planning board wants to speak to this, but there were several issues that were identified by the planning board members. I'd just like to read the summary of the, if I can find it. So the summary of the chair was, based on a discussion, the issues recommended to be addressed in the contract zone include well protection measures, which we've just talked
Yes.
about. Well quality levels must be maintained, so we talked about that. Trailhead access, which I think was your question.
It was
Or-
more related to the number of parking spots, but,
And
and
then-
that
and then the
comes right
connector.
to that, yeah.
Yes.
Modification to the conservation easement area, which I think has been addressing, but the other one I'd like to just get your kind of take on, addressing pedestrian connectivity should this crosswalk not be approved by the DOT, because I think they thought it was, without some type of speed reduction in that road, that was not likely to be approved. And it said, and then there's another committee member that felt there was missing link of compatibility to permitted uses. So those were things that I think the planning board at least raised as concerns.
Can I address that, Jim? Just because
Please.
it's in the contract zone amendment. We modified item number 4. We would like to build a pedestrian connectivity. It's outside of our control to the extent that DOT would have to approve it. And we've now added a provision that if DOT won't approve it, we will increase by adding another $15,000 into
Yes, I saw
the
that.
connectivity fund. So that is essentially the cost, some of the costs of the sidewalk extensions and things that we would do if DOT would allow it.
But I think that also there was a public comment from Jeff Jones that talked about, concern about traffic, and I don't know if the traffic study has been you checked off a bunch of things. I didn't see,
Yeah,
you said something about traffic, but I wasn't sure what that.
Our position has been that this is a very low-traffic project, and that the addition of this project does not substantially modify the traffic on Spurwink Road, not in any meaningful or material way.
But didn't I see a check mark next to traffic study or something?
There has been a traffic study, correct, and
Is
the
that
trips
shared
are
with the-
very low. I
Is
don't
that
know,
shared
Will,
with the planning board?
It was.
So-
Yeah.
It was.
Okay. Okay. And then I think Jeff Jones, gave testimony that he was thinking about a sidewalk along 77 on your property line. So you quickly went over the sidewalk layout. I didn't quite follow how you've adjusted it. Did you adjust it based on the planning board?
What we provided for in the contract zone amendment, the draft, is, I think it's 866 square feet of frontage times $25 per foot, which is, I believe, the standard that the town uses. If you do that calculation, it's actually that figure is slightly lower than the $25,000 that has been allocated. Again, we think it's up to the town in terms of where the town feels it's best to install sidewalks along Spurwink. To the best of my recollection, there are no sidewalks at present between Black Point Road and Pleasant Hill Road along Spurwink. So putting sidewalks at the frontage of the Dorado parcel would seem a bit like a sidewalk to nowhere. We would rather make the funds available to the town. I think it's in the intermodal fund, if I'm not mistaken, for the town to use at its discretion in terms of where it would like to see sidewalks installed, whether it be on Spurwink or in another location. Now, as was indicated, in the event that the Department of Transportation does not elect to reduce the speed limit along this stretch of Spurwink, which frankly we would hope that they would, it's rather odd that the speed changes from 35 miles an hour to 45 miles an hour right around a children's camp and a retirement community location, but nevertheless, that's not our determination about the speed limit. In the event that DOT will not amend its position, as was indicated, we would offer another $15,000 to the intermodal fund to raise the contribution from $25,000 to $40,000 for sidewalks at the discretion of the town of Scarborough.
JJ, does that sort of address what you think the planning board's concerns were? And
Sure, I'll hop up here so everyone can hear me. Yeah, I mean, that was, the planning board's question was sort of what's plan B if DOT doesn't allow for the crosswalk? And I think as was spelled out, the sort of in lieu fee amount, that is how the planning board typically handles that when there are other developments that come before them where a crosswalk at that frontage may not make sense. We sort of apply that same mathematical equation, essentially frontage times $25 per linear foot equals your contribution to the multimodal reserve account. One thing I will say that I did hear the board ask for, and this is part of, there is still a final, just so everyone sort of knows, after council, whenever you may make final, if you make final approval of the contract zone amendment, the project does go back to the planning board for final site plan subdivision review. And so one of the things the planning board has asked the applicant to work on is to really just do a little more digging on the aggregate impacts of traffic between this project and the prior project. And that's really, as was mentioned, they have done traffic analysis of this project. We've had peer reviewers look at it and such, but it's just really about sort of putting the data together and providing sort of that overview for the board. So that's something that the planning board will sort of continuing to track. I just want to let folks know that that's still on the radar.
Jay, can you speak to the traffic study? It was represented that it did not indicate there was going to be a substantial impact on Spurwink Road. Have you looked at the traffic study?
So as I said, we typically rely on our traffic engineer peer reviews to review those materials. We certainly take a look, but it has been reviewed by our peer reviewers and by the board at this point. And they're generally satisfied. As I said, there are still some questions, but not questions that we think can't be I dealt with as the planning board typically would through their process.
Thank you.
Anybody else have questions, comments? Councilor Johnson?
Could you, can you speak specifically on how it's consistent with the compatibility of the permitted use of the RF zoning?
Well, it's consistent with the use across the street, which is residential and nursing care facility. It's the same operator, same general project. So, I think both nursing homes and residential are both allowed in the zone. And this is nursing home and residential. So, I haven't really investigated it because I feel like it's a permitted use.
Do you agree that it's a requirement of meeting the standard of a contract zone?
It must be consistent with permitted uses or existing uses in the area, and the same operator is operating a comparable facility across the street, so I think it's consistent with the neighboring uses.
The other thing I'd just point out, this process, the issue of compatibility with existing uses, one could suggest that through this lengthy process and mitigation measures that are offered and performed, conditions that are agreed to, arguably make the use consistent as it can be with existing uses. So I think that's another lens to kind of consider that finding through.
I mean, I don't know if you've looked at the balloon study that's attached at the back of the package. With the setbacks and the buffering, I mean, my feeling is that the impact of this versus 18 or 20 single-family homes on 2-acre lots, I mean, you can draw your own conclusions.
Sure.
Just a point of clarity, though, I think we had this conversation. You referenced nursing home, but this facility that you're talking about is
All
not
independent living.
it's
Correct.
not going to have any nursing component to it.
So the folks who live in the independent living here would have to go across the street for nursing care.
But there's no nursing care
Correct.
in this contract zone
Correct.
exception we're talking about. So that's really, that's not a fact that applies to this parcel we're looking at.
Whether you would want to classify it as single family or nursing, it doesn't matter to us.
If I could offer just one bit of point of clarity, I think it is worth noting that in the original contract zone, the use is actually defined as a continuing care type use.
Retirement.
So it actually identified it as a separate use from any of the uses that were in our RF zoning at that time. I can look up the exact verbiage here, actually.
I have it.
It's probably right in the contract zone language. So the term continuing care retirement community, so that's what the use at the time of the original contract zone and what this use is being considered, just for what that's worth.
Does anybody else have any counsel?
Yeah, I do like the idea of adding maybe something to that water, to the study of the water, because I have talked to a couple of people I know personally up there, and they are concerned. And 24 months is great, but sometimes it takes a bit longer if you're doing, because I assume you're going to be doing blasting in there, which could affect wells. And so if you could increase that, I'd be fine with that. I have to say that I'm very pleased with what I've seen come back. I think the buffering is fantastic. If I were living in that area, I live in an RF zone myself. Frankly, I would prefer to see something like this with all the buffering, because I wouldn't see it. 75 feet is a huge amount of buffering, particularly with all the vegetation and whatnot. And the increase in the conservation and use of that, not building in it, is fine. The only thing that crossed my mind, and please take it the way it's meant, is I don't want to see Piper Shores coming back. I wanted to see conservation go out of conservation, because I know we went through that a bit. Just leave it be.
Yes.
But, yeah, this pocket housing, all of those factors, to me, make a lot of sense. I think it's come a long ways since I first looked at this plan, and as it is now, if you can get that water issue, just, say we will take care of any water issues in there, I could approve this today, to be honest with you. That's where I'm leaning at this point.
Councilor Johnson.
Can you speak to how many people that don't live in Piper Shores currently use the trail system in Piper Shores?
That's a good question. We have some of our abutters that use the property. Some of our abutters currently run on the property on a regular basis. They walk dogs. I would say there is not a terrific amount of traffic. Much of it is seasonal.
Yeah.
Some folks will walk through the property to get to Higgins Beach. That's more seasonal. It's always been an open parcel. The trails have been maintained pretty nicely. So if someone wants to walk through the existing conserved area, they can. They can walk on the roadways. Our speed limit is 15 miles an hour on the main roadway. So it's a very safe and secure place for neighbors to enjoy.
And I think there was a little bit in the presentation, so forgive me because I probably missed this, but is there a commitment to create some sort of signage to make it a little more, so for somebody that lives on the other side of town, I
Yes.
had no idea these trails existed,
Yeah.
right, in your side of town?
Yes, we
So
actually,
has there been a commitment to say, hey, we might make this a little more obvious to the public? or-
yes, we had
okay,
some really
great.
good dialogue with the planning board about that issue, and we have committed to being more explicit with signage about the access to
That's
the
there.
property.
Okay.
I think for many folks, they don't fully appreciate that Piper Shores is open and available to the town.
Correct, right.
And I think we would like to amend that moving forward.
Just a quick question that I know, I mean, I've driven down through, is there any parking available for the public to come in and access trails and things? I've found it somewhat difficult to find places.
It is difficult in large part because so many acres on the existing campus are conserved.
So it's available, but unless you
It
can walk
is.
in or bike in, it's not really.
It's
not that
probably
accessible.
preferable to walk and or bike.
Oh, you can park on Spurway, that's where I go. There's a little place on Spurway, you park through the garden is there, and then you just path and you walk down.
And that's actually conserved acreage. It's conserved, there's 3 acres out front that is conserved for agricultural
Right.
purposes.
Right.
But we have had some folks that will
Yeah,
park
there's
there
a
from
little
time to
tiny
time.
place.
There is. Yes.
Any other questions? So I think what we were trying to do is Councilor Bonner?
You mentioned innovative housing, is that use or the structure itself?
It's primarily the structures and how the buildings relate to each other. The best example I can give you is that the hybrid building, the 28 apartment building, throughout the country, when smaller apartment buildings are built in retirement community settings, they're really done as sort of autonomous type buildings. They just sit out there, they're unconnected. By connecting these 28 apartments to a clubhouse, that really is a concept that the industry in general has not yet really found. So we're using a national firm for architectural design, and in their experience, this is the first project that integrates a clubhouse space with a modest 28 apartment unit. So that's very innovative. The other innovation is having 3 different styles of independent living on one parcel. So we have the duplexes out front in the pocket neighborhood, the apartment dwelling in the hybrid building, and then the 8 single-family homes. So you might see 1 or 2 of those housing concepts on a parcel, but typically you don't see 3. You also don't typically see the commitment to the trails and the conserved acreage on a parcel such as this. So I think all of those factors together would suggest that it's innovative both in terms of design and also in terms of use.
It sounds like a strong element of the innovation is that there's something of a welcoming feeling on the ground floor where there's a space, a larger lobby, more open for people to meet and.
Yes, and it is really meant to promote community life. Again, folks that that would opt not to go across the street to the Maine Piper Shores campus can be very happy and very content and benefit from a lot of the amenities that exist on the other side of the street, if you will. The other thing that I think is very creative about this design is the pocket concept. The idea that we're actually going back to the future with folks coming out to their front porches and relating to each other rather than, pulling the car into the driveway and never being seen again. This is really meant to be a more social and a more engaging kind of living environment. And again, some communities have done some of these elements. I have yet to see a community that has tried to integrate them into a single site.
Your conservation easement, who will hold the easement?
That's a discussion that will be held yet with the town. I think our view is that we would prefer not to have two different holders of conservation easements. I believe the town of Scarborough is the custodian for the state DEP, I believe, on the original parcel. So we would love to entertain discussions with the town about how to structure that so that we are not having to go to two different authorities for issues relating to the conserved acreage. Not that we would expect many, but on occasion questions have arisen, and we've been able to, in the past, go to the town and get very quick, responsive information in kind.
You mentioned the wait list.
Yes.
How big is it? How much has it changed over time?
The wait list has grown pretty dramatically in the last few years. I will tell you in the past 6 years, it has grown from about 70 to 190. And those are either couples or single individuals. Those are deposits where prospects have put down 10% of an entrance fee amount to put their name on the list. The wait times at present are anywhere from about 3 to 8 years, depending upon the kind of accommodation one is seeking. And I would also note that that is organic growth in the wait list. We annually remove about 20 names from that wait list for people moving in. So it speaks to, I think, the strength of the wait list and how desirable the Piper Shores community is in this part of the state.
Can you speak to the relationship between the licensed care and the independent living in terms of your needs and the actuarial elements?
Yes. Yes. As part of the pro forma on this project, we had an actuarial analysis study completed, which really reflects the utilization of all services within the community, but it particularly focuses on the demands on the skilled nursing facility component, of which we have 40 beds, and our assisted living, of which we now have 50 accommodations. This council may recall in 2015, our first contract zone amendment allowed us to build 30 additional assisted living accommodations. So the configuration of our health services program within Holbrook, which is the general name for that building, includes 40 skilled nursing care beds and 50 assisted living. The actuarial report that we had commissioned for this pro forma indicated that we would be able to more than satisfy the increase in the number of residents that might need the more intensive level of care of assisted living and skilled care. I also would like to point out that as part of this process, we have been in formal communication with the Maine Bureau of Insurance, from which we receive our certificate of authority to operate a continuing care community. The Maine Bureau of Insurance has reviewed our application to increase the number of accommodations, has looked carefully at the utilization of health services, and has granted us an increase in the number of licensed accommodations for our continuing care community. So that's already in the books and secured.
Sorry, go ahead.
Follow up on that, I had one question, but it was unrelated to that,
Oh,
so.
go ahead, sorry.
What's your construction schedule and time, and likely, if this all progresses through and wraps up in the next 30 days, what's anticipated?
We had originally expected to be in the ground this spring, and because of the extended approval process, of course, we've had to delay that. At this point in time, our best projection is that we would be in the ground around this time next year. That's an easier question to respond to than to the length of construction. In large part, the projected length of construction will have to do with the availability of contract services. That's a dilemma for every organization that is building in this part of the state and beyond. We originally expected about an 18-month construction period. That's probably going to extend to 20 to perhaps up to 22, depending upon the supply of labor in this marketplace.
Thank you.
I wish we could be more clear in that. We would like to narrow the period as long as to as short as possible. We're projecting to use Wright Ryan as a general contractor for the project. I think well regarded in this marketplace, and are working very closely with them in pre-construction services at present.
Thank you.
Quick, sorry, Councilor Foley.
No, you were first.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Well, Bill's question prompted one that I had forgotten about. So, when residents come in, they sign a contract, a commitment,
Yes.
a mutual agreement. Are those individually negotiated and all of them somewhat different from each other, or are they all exactly the same?
The residency agreement is essentially the same document. There are two refund options. There is one that provides for a guaranteed refund amount. There is a second agreement that amortizes by 2% per month of residency. So after 50 months, there is no refund. Beyond that, the terms and conditions of the agreement, the agreed-to service package is essentially the same.
Okay, so the only difference is really the monetary piece, the financial piece. How
The
they choose to
the
structure
entrance
their-
fee, how the entrance fee is structured, and the refundability. But the service package
is all the same.
is almost identical. The one minor difference really has to do with the cottage dwellers have a few services that are unbundled, typically utilities. They also get a lesser number of meals by contract than the apartment dwellers. But generally, all residents are entitled to the full service package.
Quick question, I know, we've had lots of since February, we've had lots of comments from sort of the butters on either side. And at one point, we'd said, gee, it would be great if there's some additional dialogue between you and the abutters.
Yes.
Has any of that occurred in that time frame? And can you share sort of the nature of the conversations you may have had with the abutters? And
We haven't gone out because there's been so much public comment. I mean, if you go back and look at all the town meetings that have occurred since the planning board first sought public comment in November, we've had at least 6 sessions since then, and abutters have had many opportunities to share their views. We have taken note of those, and I think the vast majority of abutters' comments have been reflected in plan revision. To me, the proof is in the pudding. Are we responding to abutters by addressing concerns? I would say in an unqualified way, yes, we are, and we have.
do you think they feel that way?
I'd be shocked if they didn't feel that way. I think there are some abutters who feel that whatever is done in this parcel is not going to be acceptable. We will not be able to change their minds. What I think we have done is to address what we thought were the most significant concerns expressed throughout this process. And again, we go back to summer of 2018. We have had many sessions with the abutters. The listing is part of this presentation. I've met with the butters in their kitchens. I've met in their law offices. We've had them to Piper Shores. We've met with them a few times at Camp Ketchup. In all candor, I believe that as an applicant, we have gone well above and beyond in terms of reach outs. I've given my business cards to abutters. They have my direct dial number. Not sure what else we could or should have done, and as I think about this process, I think that we have been extremely responsible to requests on the part of abutters as well as planning board and town council. We've had a number of informal sessions with members of the town council. I've had a number of members individually into my office over the last 6 months. So we really, I think we've done more reach out than what I think one would typically expect from an applicant with an almost 20-year reputation in the town, with a fairly strong reputation. Now, others may see it slightly different. However, I think we've been exceedingly responsible. One of the things I've shared with Tom over the years is we've been very proud of being what I call a good corporate citizen. I think we walk the walk and we talk the talk here in Scarborough as a good corporate citizen. I think we try to demonstrate that in our outreach and in our willingness to support other organizations and our residents' willingness to reach out, to volunteer, to offer their time, their talent, and their treasure to the benefit of Scarborough. And so as I look back on this process, I don't think that there's really a whole lot that I might have suggested that we done differently in terms of connecting with constituents.
Councilor Johnson?
2 questions. One, and this might be too detailed, but do you know the maturity of the trees that are going to be used for the buffer? I know this detail might be, is that getting too much into the weeds, so to speak, or are they going to get saplings to begin with, and we got to wait 30 years before they're beautiful? Or
That's all.
yeah, right. And can you speak to that a little
Sure,
bit? Yeah.
so industry standard, and I'm a landscape architect,
Yeah.
you're asking the right guy. The industry standard is an installation height of 6 feet.
Okay. Okay.
We're proposing a mixture of 8 foot, 10 foot, and 12 foot.
Okay. Okay. And,
So it's significantly
right.
robust than your average
Perfect.
installation.
Thank you. And I asked, I think during the last workshop, do we know the square footage of the hybrid building? Do we know the square footage of that?
Yeah, we did share that in one of the written correspondence.
I can dig it up. if
I,
it's-
It might be on this plan. Can I borrow this?
Yep.
The planning board.
I can tell you, I think total
94,000
total
feet.
square
Sounds right.
footage of all building structures, I think, is 162,000. But we'll make sure that council has the
Yeah,
breakdown.
I know it's floating.
How many?
94,405.
Perfect.
Yeah, the footprint is 26,000 square feet, the footprint.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Councilor Dodd?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that probably could be addressed by the planning board, but during a construction period this long, neighbors are potentially going to be concerned, you got some blasting, the interface between the construction company and the neighbors so that they feel like there's a contact, a person they can, right, Ryan has a very
Yes.
strong reputation, so you certainly have good people, but I think that's something that these neighbors deserve to be able to have their concerns expressed and
Sure.
one-to-one. Also, points of access, we have a lot of frontage in the neighborhood from both sides, and I would want them to feel that there's an ability to understand how they can get onto the trail system, so that they're not feeling like, whoa, you know, because we're walking through backyards. Several of the Acorn Lane, they're walking through backyards onto your property.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I want them to feel comfortable that this, because you've always offered the Piper Shores as an open and welcome campus, and I would want them to feel like this works for them.
Sure. To speak to your first point, Bill, I think we would certainly make available the on-site superintendent's contact information so that abutters at any point in time could feel if they had the need or the interest in reaching out. I think we would work to do some form of an ongoing communication, whether it's a project newsletter or status updates, so that the abutters would likewise be aware of the status of the project and what is forthcoming. With regard to the access, it's my understanding that there's a current agreement between some of the Acorn neighbors and the current property owner where there is a trail or an access point through Acorn to the back parcel of the McDonald property. With the cooperation of that abutter, I would assume that that would continue for the benefit of the Acorn abutters. We would certainly be open to that. And I think, as we spoke to earlier, we would make more than sufficient use of signage to try to indicate trailheads, parking for those who wish to use the trail, et cetera. We have, one of the community benefits that the Piper Shores campus currently provides to the Scarborough community is that we make signs for the land trust. Maybe a couple thousand signs, if I'm not mistaken, at this point in time. We would likewise engage them. Their labor rate's pretty reasonable for us. But we would likewise engage them for signage for trails on this parcel as well.
Thank you. I mean, as we kind of near the end of this, is there any, we want to go around the table and just kind of, if there anything else anybody needs? I know we've identified one thing, which is just some response to the water remedy, which was one item that seemed to be some consensus around. Anybody else? Anybody want to share anything that you maybe just go right around the Sean, anything? You're good. Jean Marie, you kind of done?
The only thing I'd suggest, I mean, I know there have been significant changes since the last workshop, and I know we've spent a fair amount of time talking about feelings on the abutters and where they are, or more appropriately, where they are not. But I would still like to see some sort of, closing the loop on that, if there is.
The abutters?
Yeah. So I don't know what that, it would be in terms of a meeting or a process, but, if there is a chance to do that, an outreach by the applicant, I think that would be well received. So I don't want to speak for the abutters, but I haven't really witnessed a big shift in their feelings on this. In fact, if anything, I actually had meetings yesterday with some of the folks on Newcomb Bridge, and they're pretty hardened in their position. So anyway, I'd just ask that or suggest it may be a possibility.
Councilor Donovan?
All set.
Councilor Foley?
You just wanted, if we have any more questions or need more information?
Yeah.
Nope, I'm good, thank you.
Councilor Johnson?
No, I'm all set. Thanks for the answers, guys.
Okay. So are those two things, two consensus points for us?
Yeah.
Okay. I think with that, in remaining time, anybody in the audience that would like to come up and give public comment? If there's not enough time, we will roll it over to the start of the meeting, so. Yeah, so I'm sorry, so if you are interested, please line up and come to the podium and just give us your name and your address, and there's about 3 minutes of time allocated for some comments.
Hello, my name is Lucas Newcomb. I live at 8 Newcomb Ridge. I would like to start on just a personal note. I appreciate the lengths to which the interested party has gone to amend their plan. However, I find it disingenuous that they would bellyache about it. I believe it is disqualifying if you do not feel as though you want to take the time to do this right. Don't do it at all. With that, I do want to also say that there are some factual bases for my opposition to this development plan. For one, for me, I feel the benefits must outweigh the cons. And to that end, I cannot find a scenario where that is the case. My first point being that if you want to claim that you are bringing jobs and prosperity into the area, I would argue that those jobs that you are bringing in are those of dishwashers, custodians, and other low-paying jobs. Those jobs do not have growth, and those jobs do not provide a lifestyle for which I would expect such a high level development to bring in. Since it is not really a assisted living quarters, that means you will not have RNs, you will not have professionals, you'll have people that you will pay about $10 an hour and who will have a job turnover rate somewhere between 1 and 2 years. To me, that's not meaningful growth. For one other thing, it seems to me that the payments towards the of $25,000 to $40,000 towards the DOT or to the party responsible maybe for creating the roadside sidewalks, that to me seems like an appeasement. That seems to me like a paltry sum in terms of the long-term benefits of such a sidewalk, which would require special plowing and other commitments from and changes from a planning board or the DOT. Furthermore, who upkeeps that sidewalk? To whom do those expenses fall? Furthermore, I'm glad to see that the councilors have reflected the abutters' concerns about water monitoring, and to further say that monitoring is not enough to the abutters. Sometimes these things can manifest in more than 2 years, and at which point we do not have language to make sure that if any damage has been done, if there is no language saying that the developer was at fault for this and would take responsibility, that to me is disqualified. That is all the comments that I have.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to come up and speak tonight? You have a time.
5 minutes.
Few minutes.
That's fair.
Time on this?
That's all
Good
right.
evening, my name's Bob Dudek.
We don't have much left.
I apologize, some of my comments are going to be repetitive, but I'd just like to respond to Piper Shore's comments in regards to Mr. Johnson's question about is it compatible with the existing RF zone? And the attorney suggested nursing home, and he was a little bit befuddled with it. I'm looking at item number 10 in their Second Amendment contract zoning amendment, number 10. Maine Life Care acknowledges and agrees that the 52 units authorized by this amendment will not be licensed as a skilled nursing or an assisted living or residential care, and that accordingly such independent living. So again, I just want to point that out. It was surprising that we refer to a nursing home, and clearly they're stating this is not a nursing home in item number 10 on the amended. Then I just want to read, a lot of this is redundant, but I think it's important. There is clear opposition from Newcomb Ridge, residents of Acorn, Stone Ridge Drive, as well as some rightfully concerned citizens of Piper Shores. It's difficult for us to understand as residents of Scarborough how this continues, and that our voices don't seem to matter in some of these instances. It seems that the two most important aspects, the comprehensive plan and the compatibility of the existing zoning districts, have been forgotten altogether in this discussion. The comprehensive plan states Scarborough has rural zoning districts with 2-acre minimum lot size requirements, hoping to conserve the natural qualities of rural open space. The purpose of these districts is to lower the overall population density and protect the environmentally sensitive areas, as well as maintain larger tracts of land for resource use, but allow some development for flexibility. The Dorado Drive property is clearly in the comprehensive plan's limited growth sector, where the town desires to see development, but which is subject to development under the current RF zone. Piper Shore's proposal is clearly inconsistent with this limited growth sector. A contract zone must remain consistent with the town's comprehensive plan and compatible with the existing and permitted uses with the zoning district class clarifications. Piper Shores clearly does not meet any of the required criteria. We see no reason why Piper Shores should be allowed to bypass the zoning ordinance and the comprehensive plan. There has been no realistic conversation as to how these requirements have been met. The so-called benefit to town aspect of the conversation has gone awry. If requirements needed for the contract zone are not met, then no discussion about town benefit is viable. Trying to bridge the gap and create excuses to justify the proposed project for low-impact tax dollars or money spent by Piper Shores is wrong. The flawed process is what got us here today. It has been said by more than one town councilor that if they had been aware of the opposition on June 20th, 2018, the first reading to the town council, the project would have paused right at that point. We do recognize and appreciate the changes that are being made moving forward to correct the flawed process that had allowed us no voice at the beginning. Unfortunately, it appears this may not help our opposition to this project moving forward. Looking at other existing contract zones, it is clear that Piper Shores' original and now proposed contract amendment is like fitting a square peg into a round hole. The pieces simply do not fit. All other existing contract zones require a tweak here or there, and all are in locations that are consistent with the comprehensive plan and compatible with the existing and permitted uses within the zoning district clarification. Piper Shores is a puzzle piece that does not fit on Dorado Drive. As residents of Scarborough, we again ask you to deny the Piper Shores proposal and adhere to the requirements of the current RSO ordinance and stay the course of the town's comprehensive plan. Thank you for the consideration and allowing us the time, and I apologize for the repetitiveness of all this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me
What a great time.
take what?
I got one of, so you could take one.
One more, and then we'll start the. Yes, go ahead.
Make it under the-
You'll make it under the wire. Yes.
I'm Jeff Jones. I'm at 14 Acorn Lane, butter, and I'm sure you're tired of seeing me here. But just to be clear, we did have early meetings and have met with the developer and applicant, but it's been 8 months, and this is the first time in the last 2 or 3 weeks that they've started to make the changes that we've been talking about. So we had many meetings, but there were no changes made. And it's only now that they finally put the conservation land in like we've been requesting. We're still upset about the sidewalks, and we don't feel that it should be the taxpayers paying for sidewalks along 77, especially in front of the applicant's property. That they should put those in, and then we use the other funds to try to connect this property with Higgins Beach and with the neighborhood, because that follows a comprehensive plan of connectivity. And this is just gonna be another isolated, just like the other Piper Shores across the street, which no one even knows, can I go on those properties? Is it a private road? Is it public? Are those trails for everybody? So we're trying to make this a better project and connect this with the neighborhood. And I'll tell you, if it wasn't for this 94,000 square foot apartment building, this would have gone through, and there'd be very little opposition with the abutters. We all expected, it's an RF zone, there'd be some houses behind our house, but not an apartment building that's 94,000 square feet, that's 10 or 11 times the size of the Higgins Beach Inn, or twice the size of the Comfort Inn here on Route 1. So if that was an 8-unit pocket neighborhood, that's what we all expected. That's compatible with an RF zone. It's the apartment building that is the problem, and that's what looms over the Newcomb Ridge residents. 4 stories, they're gonna be looking at that building, 4 stories high in their backyard, and that's what I'm gonna see from my house. So that's really the crux of this. And I will mention, I think Jay can confirm that it was mentioned at the planning board that the sidewalk was gonna get moved down to cross at Dorado Drive, but I see it's back up where Newcomb Ridge is, so I'm not sure. But we all know, if you've gone on that road, there's huge trees, there's a large canopy of trees in that area. It's difficult to see pedestrians and bicyclists in the summertime because of the canopy and the shadows. So that's probably the most unsafe place to put a crosswalk on that road. And that's why we'd like to see sidewalks that connect with the crosswalk at Ocean and make it so that these residents can walk down to the beach, can walk down to the market, and that everyone else can come from there, connect up with this project and utilize the trails, so that they don't have to park cars. That's our opposition. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, I think we'll conclude or close out the workshop and reconvene to our town council meeting. So thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks for joining us tonight. No, it's fine.
Well, somebody's ready.